today's episode, I'd like to talk about different type of basins or lavatory sinks, some might call it. And I'm joined by Curtis here, 15-year plumber. Has experienced a lot of different types of sinks that are out in the market. And I was just going to go through that with you, Curtis, and explain the different types of sinks and the advantages and disadvantages of each sink. Sound good? Get going? Right on. So the first question I would have, or the first sink that I'd like to talk about, is a pedestal sink. So maybe you could explain to our viewers what a pedestal sink is and its advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, so a pedestal sink is something you would generally find in a powder room or a very small footprint bathroom. The terminology pedestal is referring to the foot that it would sit on. For the most part, the weight of the sink is resting on that leg that goes all the way to the ground. They generally are also fastened to the wall into a stud to kind of give it that stability so it doesn't pull off the wall, but the majority of the weight is going down to the pedestal. So the advantage of that is it does take up a very small footprint within the bathroom, so ideal for a powder room, for example. Downfall being is that they don't offer any storage, so whatever you can kind of fit on the top deck of the sink itself is pretty much all that thing can offer for storage.
Mm. And in some cases, people might have wall-hung sinks. So
yep.
How does that differ from a pedestal?
So it differs in the sense of, generally speaking, a wall-hung sink, of course, won't have that foot underneath it, but will come with a mounting plate that needs to get installed onto the wall, again, requiring wood backing to kind of support it. So you generally have a bracket that's installed first, and then that sink would get installed on top of it to kind of give it that support that it needs.
Okay, so not much storage with them, though.
No. Again, same kind of thing. You'd find that usually you'd find a wall-hung sink in a commercial environment, something that maybe requires wheelchair access, barrier-free conditions. For the most part, some older homes I do see have those wall-hung sinks, and it doesn't tend to be something that we see terribly often anymore, unless we're talking about like a whole wall-hung vanity. But just the sink on its own, mounted to the wall, of course, not very much storage at all in that kind of setup, and not something we see quite often in a residential setup.
Okay. And another one would be vessel sink.
Yep. So
yeah.
A vessel sink is essentially just a bowl that would sit on the top of the countertop, would have a drain that goes in the center through the countertop into the drainage, and would generally require a much higher than normal faucet to go along with it. So they do have certain parameters that you need to kind of adhere to meet code with those styles of sinks. Because they don't have an overflow, for example, you're not able to get a style of sink that has a stopper that is a vessel sink. It has to be an open grid system. But essentially it is just a bowl that would sit on the sink rather than recessed into the sink. That would be a vessel.
So if somebody went with a vessel sink, you were saying that in order to meet code, they wouldn't have a stopper, they couldn't have a plug and chain, or they couldn't have a mechanical waste. Okay, so that the water continuously has to drain. They wouldn't
Correct.
be able to use it for, if they were shaving or whatnot, mm-hmm. and I'd like to have water in the sink.
Yeah, no, you're not allowed to have a means of filling it up, essentially.
Okay, and now undermount sinks.
Yep.
What do you think of those?
So it's a style that you would generally see with a stone countertop, either quartz or granite or cultured marble, for example. With that style, you would generally have an unfinished kind of rougher surface on the top of the sink that would then be kind of adhered to the bottom of the countertop. You generally have those with pre-cut holes meant for a certain style of sink that would go in there. And you can kind of add a little bit of extra support in the sense of some brackets underneath to kind of hold it in place to make sure it stands the test of time. Generally speaking, those styles of sinks tend to be on the higher end cost-wise. They tend to be the fancier styles of sinks that get the undermount. But that being said, they're not exclusively sort of thing. You can get a little bit better priced units out there as well. That being said, it tends to be something that does require a very certain kind of countertop.
Okay, and have you ever had a customer, let's say they had that undermount sink, mm-hmm. and the sink, because it's a caulking or a glue that would hold the sink to the bottom of that countertop, right? Mm-hmm. Have you ever had any where the sinks have started coming unglued or sagging or basically falling down? Have you ever had customers calling you, asking you for assistance with that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so that does happen. It's less common in bathroom sinks than it is in kitchen sinks, because kitchen sinks tend to be so much bigger and hold so much more volume. But it is something we do see in basin sinks as well. Generally, when we're dealing with that, we would want to take that sink out completely, clean up all the silicone, get all the old stuff off. put new and then add some permanent bracing in there as well to kind of hold it firmly against the countertop from underneath.
Okay. All right. So that you have specific brackets that you would put in there?
Yeah, so there are tailor-made brackets for that sort of thing.
Okay. Okay. And are there some sinks harder to repair than others?
Yes, some do require very specific parts. For example, a vessel sink you can't just use any kind of drainage plug or a drainage connection for a vessel sink. It has to be specifically a vessel sink connection. And then same kind of thing is that you need a very specific faucet. So it does become a bit more complicated when having to deal with those specific items that are required for those installations. I've also seen it where for example, wall hung sinks or pedestal sinks, people kind of build boxes around the drainage to kind of hide the drainage in those styles. You generally have everything exposed, which people don't like to see, so they will then try and kind of hide that sort of thing with a wood frame box or something along those lines, which then may need to be taken out in order to get access to anything.
Okay, and which sink would you say is the most common in Ottawa?
Most common in Ottawa would be an overmount sink. I would say toss up between porcelain and steel enamel, but definitely the oval style overmount sink tends to be the most popular in Ottawa.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Curtis, for going through that with me. It was very helpful. And I hope you guys you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, please share it with your friends and family. And if you have any other questions about this, please give us a call or visit us at mrreuter.ca/Ottawa. If you have any questions or you'd like us to go through something else, you have you want to learn a little bit more about basins or other type of things, please let us know. And we'd be more than happy to do a video on it. Really appreciate your time, and thank you, and I guess we'll see you on the next one.